Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show it's about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about episode 2 of Outer Range. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So immediately picking up where the last episode left off, you're like, wait, what? So Autumn pushed Royal into the hole, grabbed his shirt, and then bailed. At first I was like, are you going to throw it in the pit too much? Wait, why are you grabbing his shirt? I guess she didn't want to, anyone to know this is where he went, because if they knew that this is where he went, that maybe she'd kind of get dragged into things. I don't know. What was the purpose of that? Was it just because immediately she was almost like, oh my god, what did I do? That's the thing I don't understand, is why she did it. Because later Royal's like, were you trying to kill me? She's like, no. I'm like, what the hell were you trying to do, lady? I don't get you. You're, once again, an enigma. I don't know what her circumstances are. And I love that Billy and Luke go back to the ranch, and I guess they must have already filled their mom in about everything, but she's like, yeah, Red's not here. You boys, you broke my fence. Like, go home. You're drunk before you do anything crazy. You haven't even apologized yet. And Billy was like, sorry. And she's like, thank you, Billy. And boys, go, Luke, follow your brother's example. Go home and stuff. But, right. So the way she was talking fast like that, you're like, oh, they must have filled her in about everything that went down. But then we hard cut later on to him in a field, and you're like, wait, how'd you come back? Because my thought was like, all right, you must have time traveled, which it turns out I was right. Because I knew once again, this whole conversation about Kronos, about time, what he saw that moment, like he saw a little bit of that conversation with Joy before it happened. I was like, there's some timey-wimey stuff happening. And I guess I should have known. Of course you weren't going to end up in the past. You were going to end up in the future. I guess it all comes down to how this show perceives time, because time is such a thing where it's like, you could, because sometimes we have a tendency to believe that time is like a back and forth, like a straight line, when in actuality, some things are kind of looking at time as like, technically time is happening all at once. In this very moment, there's a past, present, and future are all kind of coexisting at the same time. You're just, I don't know, timey-wimey stuff. Jeremy Bury Me. Wasn't that the name? Well, how they said, like, in The Good Place, how time actually was. It looks like time isn't like the straight line. It's actually, it spells out the name Jeremy Bury Me or something like that. God, I don't remember. It's Jeremy something. But, so, for him to wake up, and he was like, oh, I'm in the middle of the field, starts ringing, you're like, what? Then he goes back home, and they're talking about the bullet wound. He's like, yeah, I got shot. It had to be, like, Luke or something. I was like, how? I'm like, wait, we saw that one of them had a gun, but, like, wasn't it Billy that had the gun, too? That was also interesting, but him specific. Now, in the retrospect, with the ending, you're like, okay, that's making a lot more sense, but it also plays a role in why it seems like he's completely off his rocker this episode. Like, he's not, once again, this man has not talked about anything. Understandable. Like, you could bring your family there to check out stuff, but he refuses to, because I guess it's like, if I tell you what happened, you're going to think I'm crazy, you're going to have me locked up. But or maybe there's just something inside of him that's like, I can't talk about it. This has to be mine. I can't let anyone else know about it, so. But so he wants everyone in the family to go on like everything's normal. I love that they're having this conversation, and then just like Amy walks in, and they're like, oh, could you give us a minute? And she's like, no, I need to eat breakfast. And she's just pouring cereal. I'm like, they're just having a serious conversation that has to go dead silent now that Amy entered the picture. So, obviously continuing with the whole land dispute situation, Royal went to go, he went to see his lawyer Todd first, but Todd was like, yeah, this kind of goes back to like county lines being drawn and just everything being funky, and it's like, yeah, the Tillersons kind of have some say in this because legally they are right. This land, it's hard to say whether it was Tillerson land or free land, but it's clear it's technically not your land. So my advice is to give it to them. And he's like, you're telling me to give my land to them, especially because that's a mile, 600 acres of land in the, and we also know that that hole is also in the Western pasture. I'm curious, is that why, maybe on some, once again, a culmination of many other things. That's why you can tell Royal is now like so adamant when he's talking to Wayne later on. He's like, right, I will give you stuff to the South Valley, not the West. At first I was like, could it be about the hole? Like, could there be some part of him that's like, no, I need to keep the hole, like that hole is on the Western pasture, and I need that to stay with me, and I can't let anyone else have it. But it's like, does Wayne know about the hole or not? Because he says like, oh, the reason why he wants the like West pasture is like, right. And I love like that like whole monologue he went on about how he collects like very raunchy like paintings and stuff because he wanted something to get the ticker running. But then he was like, no matter what I did, no matter how much smut I put on the wall, it just never moved me. He was like, and I kept telling myself, I just need that one painting. But he's like, what I didn't realize is the thing that gets my heart running is the unknown, the thing I can't see, the thing I don't know, like the unknown of just constantly chasing something, and that thrill is what gets you going. And it's just like, yeah, and he was basically like, I'm hungry and I want your Western pasture because I want the West pasture. And no matter what, he was adamant about taking it. So and he knew something was coming in the first episode. He was like, oh, it's coming, something's changing. He even called them up, and even then Cecilia's like, I don't know, it's Wayne talking gibberish, and he's rambling. So there's that. I even love that story that Royal told about Wayne too, about like, he's like, yeah, maybe we should give it to the Tillersons and stuff like that. Just try, if they never lose, and if we give them this, maybe they'll focus less on the whole Trevor being missing thing. But then Wayne tells a story of like, right, you might not remember this because you were young. There was basically one of the bulls or whatever stabbed one of the ranch hands through, and it's like, yeah, the ambulance was an hour away. He was kind of as good as dead. There was nothing no one could really do about for him. So Wayne had a choice: shoot the valuable cattle and give this guy an honorable death, or do nothing and just let the guy die. And he did nothing. Made everyone get back to work while this guy was getting dragged around until he died. You're like, Jesus. Wayne kind of sounds kind of bad, which is so interesting that he later on in the episode when him and Royal were talking, he'd like, oh, I never like you've always been like that since we first met. Shifty. I'm like, you sound a little batshit crazy yourself, bro. But I guess it's like, hey, it's business, and I guess that's kind of the mentality we got. I found it so fascinating because Trevor seemed like the asshole last episode. Dude, Luke steeps in it now. Like, Luke seemed like he was the more reasonable one. Now it seems like he's the one that goes full-blown asshole the way he's talking to people. Especially that conversation he has with Joy early on. She's not the sheriff yet. She's campaigning to be the sheriff, but she's acting sheriff because it seems like her boss, because she's still a deputy, her boss ended up dying, and so she ended up inadvertently becoming active sheriff until they can have an election, and she's up against someone. And so the way it's like, oh, I want you to look into my brother's disappearance. It's like, it's just a belt buckle. It's, yeah, it's his belt buckle. So it's like, okay, that answers that question I had from last episode. And it's covered in blood. Something's going on here. I need you to look into it. And even being like, oh, right, you're actually running for sheriff. Oh, your opponent, he's got certain votes here and there. It's like, but if there's anything we can do. So kind of bribing her like, right, I need you to actually look into this. I mean, you're going to need our family support. We can push and nudge this election more your way if you do what we ask. So kind of that complicated thing, probably that small town thing of like, right, you're the sheriff, but we have enough power and pull to sway things in your favor if you stay in our good graces type of thing. So I think she's kind of realizing like the complicated position she did, because he was even like, oh, we've never had an Indian for a sheriff, and she's like, never had a gay one either. And he was like, yeah, be monuments. It's like, he just seems like such a tool there. So, and I think Joy just kind of realizes how much of a complicated, it's like, right, I've kind of really stepped into it now, and it's like, right, if I want this, they're going to kind of hold this above my head because of how much I want this, and they could steal this probably election from her, or just at least hamper her chances of winning if she doesn't kind of play by their rules. So we'll see how things kind of play out on that front. Obviously, a big conversation this episode was about fate. You know, you had the whole thing from, because obviously Cecilia is worried about Perry, and obviously when they were talking, Perry and Royal were having that conversation that it was like, right, it was an accident, right? And Perry's like, I don't believe in accidents anymore. He says it's all about fate, and I think he was saying like, were you talking about Rebecca when it came to that? And it's like, what, is that how do you believe fate is how this world works? And his dad was like, I don't know how this world works. And once again, context of the ending, it seems like, yeah, your entire world is shifted. Everything you've known to be true is topsy-turvy when you're like, wait, what happened here? What's going on? There's also like Amy running into Autumn, and part of me was like, I was like, no, I was about to say like, there was some part of my brain like, you don't think it's some timey-wimey stuff where Amy is actually Autumn or something like that, but it doesn't seem like that's the case. Because Autumn keeps drawing that symbol, and she's like, I've drawn it for years and years, and I found myself drawn to this place. I'm just not sure why. And Amy points out, I was like, oh yeah, that kind of looks like my family emblem. And it's like, oh, you're an abbot? Your grandfather? And she's like, yeah, he was acting weird at breakfast. She was like, wait, what? He's okay? Because she thought she killed him or whatever. She wasn't sure. I mean, once again, you weren't planning on killing him, but you still pushed him in for some reason. Because I guess they both have some connection to that hole or whatever it is, and it did something to them. I guess there's something inside of them saying, like, we're drawn to this place, we're drawn to this area, this is kind of something necessary. Like, I guess she felt on some level some need to do it. Because Royal stopped by her camp and ended up getting his shirt back, interestingly enough, and he ended up tossing it in a hole. I'm like, well, that's the thing. You ended up coming out of the hole. That's why at first I was like, how do you know Trevor's not going to end up out of the hole? How do you know your shirt isn't going to wind up somewhere? Like, kind of almost like, if you've seen the show From recently, they have God, what are they called? I keep want to say Anywhere trees, but they're not. They're faraway trees. Once again, I keep thinking of the Anywhere key from Lock and Key. But it's like, yeah, like, you ended up somewhere else. Who's to say that shirt in Trevor's body didn't do the same thing? So then there was that whole conversation they had at I think that was when they were at breakfast, right? I believe I could be mistaken. Well, it was when they were having dinner, and he's like, can I pray? And he's like, Lord, I pray. He's praying for Trevor and the Tillerson family and his own family, and he's talking. Then he starts going into this whole weird diatribe about, yeah, there's a void between you and us. I don't even know if I believe in you, but he's like, I hate you, and you're just like, and just like the entire family's looking at him like their dad's like the craziest person ever, and just like going on and on, just about like, I don't know but I do know that I hate you. Long pause. I was like, amen. And he says amen. I was like, okay, that's wild, because it seems like Cecilia's the one who is more the believer and all, like, because she had said that, it was this episode where she was stitching him up about, well, it might have been last episode. In this episode, she definitely seems to be the one that believes like everything's kind of God's, because yeah, she was talking about Rebecca being gone, and that, believing that this is all God's plan, but he was like, I don't know if I really believe that or not. But also, we got clarity about something I was curious about too. I was like, oh, did Cecilia know about Autumn? Super didn't know about Autumn. The only person I think that knew was Rhett. I don't think Perry knew. I was like, yeah, it did. I feel like they would have probably had those conversations, and at least Cecilia would have said something. But they're like, right, what if she saw something? And it's like, and Royal kept being like, oh, got it, I've got it covered. It's like, no, we need to find her and talk to her. And it's almost like, he's like, no, I'll handle it, because he didn't want them to talk to her, because she probably would have said something about the hole or whatever. To be fair, she did think, she's probably not going to say anything, because she probably thinks she killed me pushing me in that hole. So, once again, it's like, how much of that, some of your actions, are you just being like, no, I'm going to handle it myself because I don't want anyone to find out about the hole. Like, why are you still keeping it a secret? Who knows? But once again, then he also made the whole point about, like, right, I'm going to, we're going to move the cattle tomorrow. It's like, yeah, but we need to hire more hands. It's like, no, we got 10 perfectly good hands here, and he's deciding to move the cattle all at once. And you're like, why is that? And so, and I keep jumping around it, so let's talk about it. Apparently, somehow, when Autumn pushed him in the hole, he ended up 2 years in the future, and there was a whole bunch of mining equipment around, and he comes around, there's a whole bunch of people gathered, including his family. Also, the Tillersons are there. I don't know if Wayne was there. We definitely saw, I think, Luke, which is why he says Luke shot him, because Luke did. At first I was like, oh, are the military people here the ones that shot you? Is that why you lied and said Luke did it? It's like, no, Luke did it. Because I guess eventually something came out and must have revealed the fact is that Trevor is dead, and at very least he hid the body or something. So, I don't know. But then, like, he sees Autumn there, and she's in yellow. Because he had asked a question like, all right, like, I got some questions to ask you. Why are you here? You need to leave. She's like, oh, I'll keep, you want me here so I can help you out, your secrets. It's like, you don't remember anything before 9 years old. Neither do I. The fact is, he's like, right, what does the color yellow mean to you? I'm like, what are the questions? And she's like, it means power. He's like, were you ever part of a cult? She was like, yes. Then the fact is, they ask him if she has any connection to mining. And it's like, I guess he found the rocks. So I was like, but now I think he probably thought, based on what he saw, the correlation, and he saw those rocks in her tent, that maybe she's checking this place for like minerals and stuff. And that the mining equipment he saw on the land 2 years in the future is, equipment that she's responsible for, because she saw him and was looking at him, and you're like, she was shocked to see him. So, and everyone kind of was. And then you have Cecilia walk over to him, and she's like, you died in my arms 2 years ago. I'm like, what is this show? What is going on? That is some wild, I mean, it's interesting too. I didn't even think about it the first episode. Not the most recent time travel thing I've seen with a hole in the ground. Most recently being La Brea. So I'm like, okay, but it's not like some crazy amount of time travel. But that's also like, part of me is like, well, tying into like La Brea a little bit, like, could it be that, are they from a different time and they time traveled and lost their memories or something? Kind of like some other spoilers that kind of ends up being what La Brea ends up being about in some regards. So that's why I'm curious, could it be that happened to Autumn and Royal, the reason why they just randomly popped up? Maybe that's why this place means something to Autumn, because even though she can't remember it, maybe when before she was 9, she was in this area too, because she popped out of that. But it's like, right, they've been here this entire time, so how would they not know about that hole's existence? Not unless it's like the La Brea thing of, oh, it was opened and then it eventually closed, so will this hole eventually close? I don't know. But for the military to be there, it must be some wild stuff of, man, some weird stuff happened here, and now the government's involved. A lot of people encountered it. We saw Joy was there. So it's like, what's going on? And the fact is that she said, run. It must be because maybe people are thinking, maybe she's like, right, they might think you might have faked your death for these past 2 years. And she's like, right, they must have found out about Trevor, or in that time between him, like, before he died and in that 2 year period. Well, before he died, maybe he did some wild stuff that hasn't come up yet. But once again, now it adds context to a lot of stuff that he did throughout the episode. He knows what the future holds, and he's trying to move all the cattle because he knows eventually, like, trying his best to prevent that future, or trying to get ahead of it. You know, once again, now we understand what he meant about that void and everything, and the whole conversation about God, and like I said, his entire world getting flipped upside down. What role Autumn plays in it? She says that she does have a last name. It's Rivers, and you're like, okay. The fact is that she said her money comes from a trust fund. Who knows how much they believe that. The whole cult thing, you're like, were you in a cult and you got out? Or did you get out and then eventually come back in? Is there going to be a cult revolving around? Does she start a cult revolving around this hole? Because she seems so intrigued by it, so connected to it, so fascinated by it. She even saying like, oh, we've been waiting for this. So it's like, right, maybe she was speaking from the situation of, I was a part of a cult that was aware of something like this. Her fascination with Kronos and knowing all that stuff. Obviously, that's the wild side of things. And obviously, once again, there's still the more grounded stuff, because there's a whole Rhett asking Maria out. And he's like, right, about the whole Trevor thing, could you not tell the Tillersons that? Because I don't want them. You'd assume she would have heard about Trevor being missing. I mean, who knows how widespread that is, because even Wayne's kind of like, maybe he's just on one of his hell benders, so I don't got to worry about it too much, and he'll pop up in a day or two. We'll see whether that, but I don't know if the rest of the town is in on that or not. So it's like, because eventually, they would come to Maria and being like, oh, do you know what happened to my brother? And because she would know the last people that were around him were Perry and Rhett. So obviously they're going to go on a date and have dinner like the next day or whatever. So you're like, okay. Once again, there's like these grounded elements, and then there's all of a sudden like supernatural or science fictional stuff. You're like, that just seems like it comes out of nowhere sometimes. It's like, yeah, this is almost like I say this, and I've said it before, having never seen the show, got Yellowstone vibes to some extent. So I'm like, oh, okay, it seems like Yellowstone, and then like here's this massive supernatural sci-fi element that comes out of nowhere and smacks you in the face. You're like, where did that come from? It just seems so weird and out of place. But obviously, it's a major through line. I guess now sitting and thinking about it, maybe that's why he's moving the cattle, because he doesn't want to take the chance they might fall in a hole. And maybe if he can make sure that cattle are taken care of, maybe he thinks it'll help put them in a position where they can save the ranch and be in a position that he can help prevent that future in whatever way he can. Because he made sure to go after that one cattle because he knew it was heading towards the hole, and was like, right, probably he's like, well, those other two cattle that were missing probably fell down that hole. So once again, did they pop up 2 years in the future? Does everything in that pit lead there? So why is it that, does the pit connect there? So does that mean Trevor's body was discovered on this land, on the Abbott's land 2 years prior? Because like, once again, timey-wimey stuff. If that's the case, how long was it before Royal went through? Because it was a couple minutes, most likely, difference between him throwing Trevor's body in there, him being pushed. That difference, present day to future time wise, could be hours. So, like, say for example, if they both were sent 2 years into the future, maybe that couple minutes difference could mean like, oh yeah, I ended up here 7 days later than the body arrived, or something like that. Once again, maybe that plays into why Luke shot at him immediately, or like I said, it happened before he died. Like, information came about of like, right, you were the last one with my brother, because Joy is checking the belt buckle and she's going to find out there's blood, and maybe some of like Perry or Rhett's blood got up there along with Trevor's or something. I don't know. That's the big takeaway from all of this is, wow, I don't know. Also, just thought it was kind of an interesting scene, Billy singing in his underwear. That was interesting. And not just in his underwear, it's his tighty-whities too. I was like, okay. Once again, just kind of almost gives that feeling like, is that supposed to represent that Billy's like a little off? Yet again, I don't know. I'm excited to see where the next episode takes us. Well, next 2 episodes, because I was looking into it. Apparently, it's going to be released. The show's going to be releasing 2 episodes every week, so that's interesting. Usually, it's like first 3 episodes and then like 1 a week. But either way, it doesn't matter. I'm excited to see where next week's episodes end up taking us with all of this, as we're still like dumbfounded about what's really going on. And because he doesn't know, like, when he dies either. So I guess that's even more reason why to rush, because he knows he's going to die eventually. So he's got to probably lay as much groundwork, down as he can before he dies. Because he still doesn't even know the circumstances of how he dies. He just knows that he dies in his wife's arms. And so he's trying to make sure everything's okay before he does. So that's why he's in such a rush. Because it's like, right, you know that you're dead, but somehow you just don't know how. And so you're trying to make sure your family's taken care of and okay and looked after when you're gone, because you know it's happening at some point. Because probably relatively soon in the future, because all she said was, right, you died 2 years ago. So we'll ultimately have to wait and see. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.